Senate rules give Republicans until next Saturday to pass a health care bill with a simple majority. Otherwise, Elaine, they'll need 60 votes. And that's why this Graham-Cassidy bill is suddenly on the fast track, giving the Congressional Budget Office no time to come up with its own estimate of how many people might lose coverage under the plan.
Nancy, you point out time is of the essence here. Could this time crunch force lawmakers to approve the bill?
It could work both ways. On one hand, it could force some Republicans off the fence. They know that really time is of the essence. They only have until next Saturday. If they vote against this plan or announce their opposition, there really is no other option. On the other hand, it could give some Republicans the opportunity to say, look, this is a rushed process. I don't know enough about this bill. I don't know what it'll mean for my state. I don't know how many people will end up worse off than they were before, and I can't in good conscience go along with a bill like this. Now, we have not heard that yet. Republicans that we spoke to over the last couple of days have said they're looking at the plan. They're trying to get more information from Senators Graham and Cassidy. But the problem is there's only so much information those two senators can give them, because this is an approach that hasn't been tried before. And without some analysis by nonpartisan number crunchers like the CBO, it's difficult to know exactly what the impacts will be.
So I think you just answered my next question, though, Nancy. Are there any estimates at all, even rough estimates, about how many people could lose insurance coverage if this bill passes?
There are some outside groups that have done some calculations, and the CBO has taken a look at legislation that is similar in some ways, and that is what has given Democrats ammunition to argue that, according to those analyses, the bill would push possibly tens of millions of people off of coverage that they have now. The Republican response has been, A, that they don't believe that these analyses typically do a very good job of determining what would happen to people's coverage, and B, that people are already losing coverage under Obamacare, and that every year you have fewer and fewer insurers who are interested in offering coverage on the exchanges. So that's the back and forth that you're hearing right now, and what it's really going to come down to, Elaine, is whether a handful of Senate Republicans decide to just take the leap with their Republican colleagues, or whether they hold out and say, this isn't the right way to do this. We just need more information before we take a leap on something that is going to remake 1/6 of the nation's economy.
Meantime, over on the House side, Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi had some harsh words for the legislation, calling it a, quote, stinkeroo. She believes she'll be able to stop the bill in the House. What are you hearing about its chances, not only in the Senate, but the House?
It's really hard to say, Elaine. Remember, when the House passed its version of an Obamacare repeal bill way back in the spring, it only passed by one vote. They had one Republican that got them over the top. And so if they lose any support at all, they will not be able to pass this bill in the House. And the challenge for the House is that because of the Senate rules, the Senate, if it does manage to pass this bill, the House can make no changes to it. They basically have to accept it as is. And that could end up frustrating some conservatives who say, well, I don't like this bill because it essentially enshrines Obamacare's taxes into law. I'm all about getting rid of taxes, and therefore I don't think that this bill is much better. On the other hand, you'll have moderates who say, well, I'm very concerned that this bill could leave my state worse off, send less money to my state than it gets right now. So that is the big question mark, and it's kind of a leap of faith. You'll have Senate Republicans potentially taking a very difficult vote, not knowing exactly how it's going to go over in the House.
So how does President Trump factor into all of this? He's voiced his support of the bill. How could he, how will he be able to influence a vote, if at all?
Well, he can put pressure on the holdouts already. We've seen him tweeting, for example, about Rand Paul, who has really slammed this legislation. He says it's no better than Obamacare, and he wants to work on something that strips away more of Obamacare's taxes and regulations. And the president tweeted that Rand Paul, in this instance, is really not helpful, that he's become a barricade to Republicans and Republican efforts. And so it's quite possible that you'll see more of that. You've also got the vice president who's been here on the Hill talking to senators. The problem is that when it comes to some of these holdouts, there really isn't much time for the White House to try to give them something that eases their concerns, because we're looking at a Senate vote that probably would have to take place, let's say, by next Wednesday or Thursday. That doesn't leave a lot of time to massage this legislation and make it more palatable to the holdouts.
Finally, Nancy, as you mentioned in your piece, former President Obama spoke out against this Wednesday, calling it aggravating. How are his remarks playing out on Capitol Hill?
Well, Democrats appreciate it because it basically gets the word out to the grassroots as quickly as possible. You know, Democrats were sort of caught by surprise by how quickly momentum seemed to gather behind this bill. And while you had thousands of people calling Senate switchboards a couple of months ago when Republicans were voting on a variety of health care plans, you know, about a month ago, the Senate's Republican leader, Mitch McConnell, said they were moving on. They were not going to try to pursue a health care plan anymore. And that was something that a lot of activists took to heart, and they began to focus on other things. And now Democrats are desperately trying to sort of rally the troops and say, we need you back at it. We need you to be doing rallies. We need you to be making phone calls, sending emails to send a message to your own representative that you don't think that this is a good idea. And so it never hurts when the former head of the party, whose name, after all, is in the nickname for the bill, gets up and talks about it and says that they need to rally the troops one last time. All
right. I have a feeling it'll be a busy week to 10 days ahead. Nancy Cortez on Capitol Hill for us. Nancy, thank you.
You're welcome.